be able to teach it simply. It means you know what you're talking about. But what if it's too simple? What is the problem with making things simple? What's the problem with oversimplification? Is oversimplification causing the pandemic of misinformation? Caloric balance and weight issue. Well, let's talk about that.
Warning. The following presentation contains information that might contradict what you have previously heard, or believed to be true, about how the human body works, and contains material that is not suitable for closed-minded individuals. Enjoy!
Everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler. It's a quote that's attributed to Albert Einstein that is a reflection of the need to teach things to its simplest form. It's an extrapolation and exaggeration of Occam's razor, which is misapplied within this and misapplied within a lot of the stuff we talk about as relates to how the human body works, where the misapplication of Occam's razor is that when we're faced with two equal hypotheses, we always choose the simpler. That's not what Occam's razor is telling us. Occam's razor is telling us is to make the conclusion off of the conclusion that has the least number of assumptions to be faulted, to be failed. And the problem is when we start applying those two things out of context, is that we continue to extrapolate and continue to propagate a lot of myths and misconceptions about how the human body works and how the human body functions, where Occam's razor is not always applied in the correct fashion, particularly when we start looking at the way in which we learn about things and extrapolate things within our educational environment, in the way in which we talk about it and extrapolate it within particularly the media feeds in an attempt to educate people about how the body works. Where we have a whole bunch of people who are talking with very limited levels of expertise, and where those who are experts fail to use the trust me, it's complex in terms of the expression of knowledge, where it's always going to be, it's very simple. Here is what it is. It's very simple. Here is what it is. When it comes to the idea about calories and weight, we tend to extrapolate a lot of opinions for facts and facts for opinions, where most of what we continue to discuss and continue to propagate is not factually correct, but is more of an ad populum bandwagon effect that we are holding on to ideas based off of either groupthink or based off of an anchoring bias to what has been previously discussed or previously researched without looking at the newest levels of understanding we might have. Where we always go, well, that's not what I was taught. And because it's not what I was taught, we will go ahead and poo-poo that idea, or we will take that idea and defend our own idea, not off of the new facts, but based off of what we were previously taught. And this is where science comes into play. Scientists are constantly looking at new evidence and new ways of looking at and explaining the world. It's not about what I was taught, it's about what I'm able to logically explain. Where I cannot plug my ears and go, la, 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 I'm not listening to you, and deal with confirmation bias in terms of what I am learning or what I am holding on to. And that's the problem when we start talking about body weight, in particular body weight as it relates to caloric balance issues. Where if you go and look at a lot of the old textbooks, if you go back and discuss things and think about things that we learned when we were in high school or junior high school, or for some of us even in our undergraduate education, we got taught specific things that are factually not true anymore. Those factual not truths get propagated into medical education. They get propagated by people with
confused.
degrees.
So by definition, if you expend more energy than you consume, so your calories out is larger than your calories in, you will lose weight. That is a fundamental law.
Or send in less. If you eat less than maintenance, let's say 250 calories less than all of your body processes need to keep you doing whatever you're doing, that 250 calories is going to have to come from somewhere. And your body's like, hey, listen, no problem. And it goes around, sort of, by analogy, as an index. All the board is together, and the CEO's like, nervous system, what are you doing with your calories? I need to run the whole body. Are you crazy? Like, okay, we're not going to break down the nervous system for calories. That's insane. Muscular system, it's like, dude, I'm doing stuff. Your muscle can be used for breakdown, but it's not super efficient to do that. And then it goes over to body fat. Hey, body fat, you got any calories? What are you doing with them? It's like, nothing, give it up. So your body fat will release calories and then it'll fill up that deficit for you. And over weeks and weeks and weeks, the amount of fat you're storing starts to winnow down.
And what ends up happening, we start using these old analogies where we have this balance point where calorie in over calorie out. If I have more calories coming in than going out, I'm gaining weight. But if I have more calories going out than calories coming in, I am losing weight. It's based off of faulty assumptions. It's based off of a faulty analogy. We are not this mechanism of machinery. We are not set in a static equilibrium of energy. Some of the faulty analogies that are coming into play here. There's a faulty assumption that fat mass is simply inert tissue that's doing nothing more than, as was just discussed, storing energy for the body to use. What is adipose tissue doing? It's insulating, it's cushioning, it's providing hormones to do regulation. It's providing regulation in inflammation responses. It's providing regulation in metabolic responses. It's doing thermogenesis. Yes, there is fuel storage, but the problem is when we do the oversimplification is that we're simply looking at it as a fuel storage, where that fuel storage is going to provide us with that quote unquote calorie issue that is coming into play. We also have to deal with the fact that we are not correctly applying the laws of thermodynamics. We are failing to uphold certain assumptions within both the first law and the second law of thermodynamics, the calorie in, calorie out being the idea about the energy transference that's taking place. Where because we are not at equilibrium, because there is a loss of energy as we head up trophic levels within fuel sources, within foods, where we do not get an equilibrium of energy coming from the foods that are being eaten, we do not have an equilibrium where we can apply the laws of thermodynamics in the ways in which the physician was discussing in terms of calorie in, calorie out. We have an error in the assumptions that Atwater provided to us in the late 1800s and early 1900s that became the hallmark of the caloric balance discussion that started in the 1920s. And this is the fact that not all food is simply used as fuel for energy. The way in which we went about assessing caloric expenditure, the ability to generate heat, which we'll get to in a second, is based off of a bomb calorimeter where we actually explode or combust fuel sources, foods, to determine how much energy is being produced from that food, but then looking at how much energy is being produced based off of how much heat is being lost to the environment in a trapped environment, in a static environment, where we are at equilibrium with our external environment, which we are not at. It ignores the conservation of mass. It ignores the conservation of mass over the implication that thermodynamics is going to govern body mass. And because we're ignoring the conservation of mass, we ignore the emphasis for what is actually body weight. How much does a calorie weigh? What is the weight of a calorie? Calorie is a unit of energy. It's not a mass unit. Yes, E equals mc squared. I understand that. But what we're talking about calories. We're talking about calorie balance as a weight balance issue. The calorie that we're talking about is the equivalent of 4.186 joules of work that can be completed for each calorie that is consumed. But we're not at a static equilibrium in terms of the amount of energy within the foods that are being consumed because we do not get the equal amount of energy in the foods to be used. So we're already at a calorie imbalance, a caloric deficit, simply by looking at the amount of energy in a food and the amount of energy available to the body from the food that is being consumed. The problem with the balance point that everybody talks about in terms of this calorie in, calorie out is that it's based off of an assumption of how many calories is necessary or needed within the day. And the problem is that we do not have a stable, agreed upon, available estimate for energy. We do not know how much energy is actually necessary for each individual to have their balance point. The 2000 calorie diet is bumpkiss. It ignores the complexity of physiology. It ignores the complexity of physiology for the assumption that it's all about calorie in and calorie out.
But I probably would lean it towards diet. So, for
Really?
example, if you're trying to lose weight, exercise is almost meaningless.
You're kidding.
Yes, it's important, but diet is going to get you the majority of the way there.
And what that doctor does is ignores the evidence that is out there. It ignores the complexity of the issue. It ignores the complexity of the problem. It ignores the evidence that we have shown in meta-analytical research on pooled effect size that indicates that exercise is greater than caloric restrictions, dietary restrictions, caloric imbalances. It ignores the evidence that nutrient balance provides a greater benefit for weight loss than caloric balance does. And because we're ignoring those bits of evidence, we are providing an incomplete picture as to what it means to have a caloric balance and what it means to have a weight balance in terms of weight and calorie balance. It ignores the fact that the calorie is a calorie violates the laws of thermodynamics. It ignores the newer analysis that we have in terms of energy metabolism, or the fact that energy metabolism is only one small part of all of metabolism. What the calorie in, calorie out discussion tends to do is it tends to focus on the fact that metabolism is nothing more than about energy, but metabolism is much more than energy. It's everything goes on in your body in order to allow us to maintain homeostasis. It ignores the nutrients that are necessary for us to maintain our body. It ignores the fact that the calorie in, calorie out balance changes based off of my body weight status and whether I'm actively attempting to maintain my body weight, gain body weight, or lose body weight. But here's the biggest problem, particularly for all of those equations that we just showed. The calculations are biased against anyone that is not white, not European, not active, and not male. All of the equations that we have show very good correlative effect for white, European active males between the ages of about 18 and 35. It is not very good for anybody that is not within those categories. So when we start looking at this idea about oversimplification, we start looking at this idea about the caloric balance ideas. What we have to remember is that we have to take a step back and we have to look at what is the information being provided to us. Is it factual information or is it opinion information? Within this idea about fact versus opinion, are we holding on to confirmation bias? Are we holding on to ad populum? Are we holding on to a bandwagon effect where we want something to be true because it's popular versus is it actually scientifically correct? Are we seeing groupthink coming into play? Are we seeing anchoring biases coming into play? More importantly, are we looking at a Hawthornean effect where we are reporting on the observations based off of what we are seeing without having objective analysis to what we are seeing? So when we start looking at the scientific debate, when we start looking at the scientific idea about body mass and about caloric balance, when we start looking at body weight and body balance in terms of caloric balance, what we have to remember is that it's not about calorie in, calorie out. Calorie in, calorie out does have a contribution to it. However, it's about nutrient intake and nutrient utilization. If I do not get the nutrients that I need from my diet, I'm going to be breaking down body tissues in order to get those nutrients. And it's not about energy, it's about nutrients, which means if I want to lose weight, I need to be in a nutrient deficit. If I want to gain weight, I need to be in a nutrient surplus. And it's for those specific nutrients that I need for those tissues to grow and be maintained. Well, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Hopefully, get a bit out of what we just talked about in terms of some of the myths and misconceptions comes out because of the oversimplification as relates to the caloric balance issues and body weight. If you have questions or comments, please leave it to us in the comments. We are more than happy to discuss these in future discussions. If you're liking what we're putting out there, please make sure you give us that thumbs up. Please make sure you are giving us that 5-star rating. Share with all your friends and family. Please make sure you subscribe to follow us here on YouTube, as well as in the podcast. Quick takes on Instagram and Threads, the written stuff in Substack, as well as on Blue Sky.